and welcome to episode number 95 of the Cheesesteaks and Controllers podcast, presented by Fox PHL The Gambler, 102.5 FM, 1480 AM, and iHeartRadio, plus Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts. Wherever you listen to your podcasts, we are there to give you the best in esports and gaming news for the week. And this week, folks, it is all about Overwatch League 2022, the league's fifth season, big number 5, starting off huge this week. The introduction of Overwatch 2, there are new rules to go over and new things to recall, and we will go over that in the first segment. Second segment, we will go over the schedule for this weekend's festivities, which includes something I was not privy to until I started doing research for this episode, and it kind of grinds my gears, and we'll get into that in the first segment, actually, but then we'll talk about the second segment. And then the third segment will be all about your Philadelphia Fusion season preview of what to expect in their first match. But before we do any of that, let's get right down into the 6 in 60 seconds. Team SoloMid CEO Andy Reginald Din accused of retaliation, verbal abuse, and misclassifying employees in a new Washington Post report. Meanwhile, an IGN report has detailed growing discontent with the Nintendo of America, citing unfair treatment of contractors, among other issues. Activision faces a new lawsuit from New York City contingent that believes CEO Bobby Kotick was unfit to negotiate the Microsoft deal at the time of its closure. Bungie stands up for reproductive choice and liberty and speaks out against abortion rights overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court. Square Enix will sell Crystal Dynamics, Eidos Montreal, and Square Enix Montreal to Sweden-based Embracer Group, along with 50 IPs including Deus Ex and Tomb Raider. And finally, Blizzard has revealed a brand new mobile game, the first mobile game in Warcraft history, Warcraft Arclight Rumble, coming to iOS and Android later this year. Those are your 6 in 60 seconds. Yes, folks, those are your 6 in 60 seconds for the week. Just a wonderful bit of news in those headlines. Am I right? We've got retaliation, verbal abuse, misclassifying employees, unfair treatment of contractors, Bobby Kotick, whose name I just hate saying at this point, one game company standing up for what happened down in what leaked in DC, and that big news. We're not going to get into that, but only one speaking out against it. It's a weird time, honestly. It's a weird time when you have headlines like that. You don't really know how to think, how to feel, what to do in this situation. So I'm going to do what I do best, and that is bring you something that hopefully will bring you a little joy, build you up a little bit, get you out of that slump that you might be in, thanks to the news and the way the news works. So let's get right into Overwatch League 2022. It is finally here. The first matches of the Overwatch League season happen Thursday, May the 5th. This episode's actually going up Thursday morning, so you can enjoy all these previews and all this news leading up to that first match at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. It's a new look league. There is a lot to know about what is going on in the league this year. If you watched the Overwatch League Grand Finals last year and then just decided, I don't need to do anything else, and now you're back for more, the league's going to look completely different, sort of. So there are a couple of things that you need to know getting into what's going to happen come 3 p.m. today if you're listening live, or when the episode goes live, or if you're watching throughout the weekend or throughout the entire season. First and foremost, the big thing, obviously, is that Overwatch 1 is done. Overwatch 2 is in. Overwatch 2 still in beta testing, still going through the motions, has not been officially fully released yet, looking at 2023 for that to happen. So so Blizzard is using the Overwatch League season to fine-tune, to, as a open beta test, as a public beta test, in more ways than one. Normally a public beta is the public gets to play it. Here, it's the public's going to be watching it in high-profile matches. So it's an interesting experiment. It's not something that esports has done before, and I am curious to see how that pans out. But how does it apply to the league itself? Well, first and foremost, the big change, 5-on-5. We are no longer doing 6-on-6 competition. Each team has lost a tank because of the way that Overwatch 2 works. So you have 2 supports, 2 damage dealers, and a single tank, which means fights will be faster, which means fights will feel more fluid, which means matches themselves could end up going faster because there are more, kills happening, and pushes are faster because there's only one tank protecting a team at a time. Take out the one tank, you basically can take out the entire team. I have a feeling that's how the meta is going to look in the very beginning, but we will see. That is probably the biggest change. And with Overwatch 2 also comes some new locales and a brand new hero. So the new hero in Overwatch 2, who will be available to players in the league, is called Sojourn. She is a damage dealer with a railgun that every time she hits consistently, she gains energy, which then leads to her overall ultimate move, doing huge damage to multiple enemies. Being a hit scan damage dealer, I'm thinking Sojourn will fit in well with the Fusion's star Carpe, but we'll get into that in the third segment of the show. But Sojourn will be available as a damage player to all teams. So the opening meta of this league, I imagine, will have to do a lot with Sojourn, just because the teams have not had as much time to work with her or to practice with her. I do expect to see her in the beginning, and then maybe week 2, week 3, or even week 4, things will start to slow down. Also in Overwatch 2 and in the Overwatch League this year is a new game mode. So you have Hybrid, you have Assault, you have Control, and then you have Escort with the payload. But there will be a 5th game mode this year called Push. So in Push, there are robots, giant robots that have to be pushed from one side to the other, and whichever team either A, makes it all the way to their side, or has pushed it more at the end of the timer, will win. Now, this is replacing Assault. Assault may no longer be a part of the league anymore. I think Push is a faster league, and that's what they're looking for, so you may not see as much Assault anymore. But Push is a lot of fun. There have been some preview matches. There has been a beta test that you can see how Push works. I see a lot of push and pull, for lack of a better term, in this mode. I do see a lot of entertaining content coming out of it, and some really tight, really high-profile matches. So Push is definitely something to look forward to in this new Overwatch League, but it remains to be seen just how different it will be and how long these matches will go in the early going of this season. There will also be 4 new maps that will be added to the pool. 2 of them are dedicated to Push. One is Colosseo, set in Italy, and one is New Queen Street, set in Toronto, Canada, I believe, which are huge maps with different checkpoint areas as the robot progresses one way or the other. So you'll see offense and defense around a certain checkpoint, and then it'll get pushed. The robot will get pushed back to center or continue to move on. So look for those 2 maps. Midtown, which is Overwatch's take on New York City, will be added to Hybrid, and then Circuit Royale will be added to Escort. So 4 new maps being added to the pool, 2 for the brand new mode, 1 for the existing Hybrid, and 1 for the existing Escort. And then finally, the biggest changes you need to know are reworks to some of the existing characters. Orisa has become a bit of a warhorse, so she's a little faster tank. Doomfist is a tank now instead of being a damage hero. And then Bastion and Sombra have also been reworked in this first outgoing for the Overwatch League. A couple other characters have benefited from the game's overall changes. Like, you'll probably see some more Soldier 76. You might see a little more Lucio back in the meta, but that's where we stand right now. Also, notable to know about the league itself, live events are mostly coming back. There are a few live events scheduled for this weekend, so you will see crowds on the Overwatch League broadcasts, which is really, really cool. I know Houston and Dallas are having a battle for Texas on May the 6th. That's going to be one of the first big live events of the year. That's Friday night. And then From there will be more live events added to the schedule as the season goes on. I would not expect Philadelphia to be one of those because Philadelphia, unfortunately, is still playing in the Eastern Conference or the Eastern region. So they are based in Seoul for the year. They did not make the trek back west, which is slightly disappointing because I would have liked to have seen some live Philadelphia Fusion action. Maybe, hopefully, definitely in 2023. But for now, just the normal online-only stuff for your Fusion at the moment. Because of the switch from 6-6 to 5-on-5, the roster mania after Overwatch League was a very, very heated and eventful one. So a lot of teams will not be looking the same as they did when the season ended back in 2021. There have been a major influx in players from the Valorant scene, believe it or not, coming over to try their luck in Overwatch. And those games are pretty similar, although Valorant definitely holds more similarities to Counter-Strike in terms of basic format. The hero format, where every hero has its own weapons and ultimates and stats and stuff like that, that is definitely part of Valorant as well. So these Valorant pros coming over to Overwatch to see what that's all about is going to be interesting. A couple of teams with new looks that you should be aware of: LA Gladiators, New York Excelsior, San Francisco Shock. LA Valiant in the Eastern Conference is going to be a force to be reckoned with this year. After going winless last year, I see a big turnaround for them with a brand new team in a brand new game starting this year. But we will see what happens there. And finally, in the next segment, I'm going to start to make predictions for Week 1. But to be completely honest, it's kind of hard to do that. It's kind of hard to predict who's going to win each match, at least in this first section of the year, which I'll get into the format in the second segment, because we don't know. We don't know how 5-on-5 is going to impact teams. We don't know how new characters, Sojourn, are going to impact teams. We don't know how the reworks for the existing characters are going to impact teams. This first 4 weeks, the first segment of the year, is going to be very interesting. It's going to be very touch and go, very hard to predict, just because we don't know where the game sits. And it's a situation like this that I think esports is kind of unique in. Sure, in regular sports, you may have some blockbuster trades or a big draft class or stuff like that, but it's rare that a team would leave the off season or leave the previous season and come back with an entirely new roster of players. And that's happening in at least 3 different situations here in the Overwatch League, and I find that fascinating. So, when the first match kicks off May the 5th at 3 o'clock, Thursday, later today, if you're listening when the podcast goes live, it'll be a whole new look, a whole new way to get into the Overwatch League, and frankly, the perfect time to get in to the Overwatch League and see what everything's all about, because everything's brand new. This is a perfect jumping off point. Now, seasoned Overwatch fans may tell you that from playing the beta and seeing some videos that it's not going to look terribly different. I think that actually works in its favor from a casual viewer standpoint who may have seen Overwatch League a couple times in the past. They may look at it and say, wait, I thought this was a new game, doesn't look all that different, and then they see the new stuff and they go, oh, okay, now it makes sense. But for a brand new, never played Overwatch before, never watched Overwatch League before, this is the time to get in and start watching some Overwatch League. So if that is you, if that applies to you and you're listening to this right now, 3 o'clock p.m. Eastern, on Overwatch League's official YouTube channel. Check out the first match, and then check out the second match. Check out as many matches as you want. See what you think. I think you'll be hanging out for a while, but maybe I'm a little biased because I've been watching Overwatch since almost the beginning. I'm not going to say it's been the beginning. I did not watch that first season, but I have watched basically every season since. So that is the things you need to know about the new Overwatch League season starting later today. In the next segment, we're going to get into the first segment of the year called the Kickoff Clash. We'll get into the different things you need to know about that, including one that really bothers me. But we'll get to that on the other side. So stay tuned to talk about the Kickoff Clash, Overwatch League 2022 happening. It's here, folks. We finally got there. Stick around. All right, welcome back to Cheesesteaks and Controllers, episode 95, the Overwatch League 2022 preview show, presented by Fox PHL, The Gambler. This is Jason Finelli, esports and gaming insider. Now we're going to get into the first week of competition, starting today at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, if you're listening when this podcast goes up. If you're listening throughout the weekend, it's already happening. What are you waiting for? So, the Kickoff Clash is the name of the first of four in-season sort of mini tournament round robin things, just like they've done in previous years, where they've had 3 or 4 weeks of qualifiers. Then they took the top 2 teams from each conference in performance from those qualifiers and brought them to one central area to have the finals of that segment, where points in the standings are up for grabs if you do better in the in-season tournaments and stuff like that. So it's not anything we haven't done before. This particular one, though, for Kickoff Clash, is a regional tournament, which means the West will stay in the West, the East will stay in the East. In the West, each team will face off twice against every other opponent over the course of the season. So there are 13 teams in the West. That is the Atlanta Reign, the Boston Uprising, the Dallas Fuel, the Florida Mayhem, the Houston Outlaws, the London Spitfire, the Los Angeles Gladiators, the New York Excelsior, the Paris Eternal, the San Francisco Shock, the Toronto Defiant, the Vancouver Titans, and the Washington Justice. And then in the East region, you have the Chengdu Hunters, the Guangzhou Charge, the Hangzhou Spark, the Los Angeles Valiant, Philadelphia Fusion, Seoul Dynasty, and Shanghai Dragons. So that's how things split up. Because there are so many teams in the West, like I said, throughout the entire season, not just the Kickoff Clash, throughout the entire season, every team in the West will have played each other twice. In the East, they'll play a round robin. Every team will play every other team throughout the cycle. So every team in the East will play every other team in the East once per cycle. Every team in the West will play every other team in the West twice for the season. So that's how it breaks out. Yes, I know that's very confusing, but it's just the way they've decided to do it. Hopefully next year they'll be back in some semblance of where this stuff doesn't matter anymore. Teams will get 1 league point for every qualifier match that they win. Every team that qualifies for the Kickoff Clash tournament will receive 1 extra league point, and then the scoring for the actual tournaments themselves will be announced later on. I don't think that's available yet. So Kickoff Clash kicks off this week, and here's the part where I have to talk about what grinds my gears. So I am getting ready for this podcast, and I decided to log on to the Overwatch League Pick'em, where you can use your Battle.net account to pick the games, who's going to win throughout the week of upcoming matches. In this particular case, it gives you the entire Kickoff Clash to predict. You have to predict it all at once. I assume because of how unpredictable it will be, it makes it more challenging. I understand why they did that. I'm going to try it. We'll see what happens. So I'm looking at these, and I'm thinking to myself, something's off about this first week. I'm seeing all these matches, I'm picking them, but something doesn't seem right here. What the heck is going on? And then I realized that for some reason, unbeknownst to me until tonight, the Eastern Conference starts 2 weeks after the Western Conference. So the first 2 weeks of Overwatch League, this week and next week, are all Western Conference teams. Not a big deal. Still has Overwatch League to watch. But being in Philadelphia, that means I have to wait 2 more weeks to watch my team play, which is bogus. When I started getting ready for this, they had a matchup on the schedule, Shanghai Dragons, May 5th. I saw it. I've been talking about it with Sean Brace for 2 weeks, for multiple weeks now. What the heck happened that the schedule immediately changed? When did it change, and why wasn't I informed? I don't know. So, unfortunately, when I run down the matches for this week, you will not hear the Philadelphia Fusion's name. You will not hear anybody in the Eastern Conference's name, because they don't start until the week before Memorial Day weekend, which, great. So, when I talk about the Philadelphia Fusion in this third segment, it's going to be something that happens 2 weeks from now, not this week, and that's makes me pretty upset. But enough about that. Let us talk about the matches that are happening this week, and which way I think these matches are going to go. So starting with that first match, 3 p.m. Thursday, May the 5th, New York Excelsior taking on LA Gladiators. I'm choosing the LA Gladiators here because they have Funny Astro, the former Philadelphia player, and I like him a lot. No, I honestly think that New York Excelsior are going to have an adjustment period coming back into the Western Conference from the Eastern Conference. Yes, the format and everything is new, but I do think that there will be one or two matches where they're going to have to get their footing underneath them, and I do think LA is going to take that one. Second match on Thursday is San Francisco versus Paris, and honestly, San Francisco is one of the biggest question marks going into this 5th season. After 4 years of consistency and 2 of the 4 years being champions, this could be the year that San Francisco kind of falls back into, not mediocrity, because they were never there, back into the middle of the pack for a season. Super, the longtime player, retired. They've had a lot of turnover on their roster. I just don't see them being the same San Francisco that we're used to, and I think it starts right here with a Paris victory at 4:30 on Thursday. Moving on to 6 p.m., Florida versus Atlanta. I think I'm going to lean towards Florida here. Again, I don't know why I'm really thinking this way. I'm just looking at this matchup and looking at their rosters, and Florida sits better with me. But honestly, all of these could go either way. There's no way to predict any of this. It's Friday, May the 6th. We have London and San Francisco. In fact, I think I'm going to stop predicting them because what's the point? You have London, who was one of the worst teams in the league last year, taking on San Francisco, who could still be in tumult. We'll see how they're going. Boston's first match of the year, taking on Vancouver, Friday, May 6th at 4:30. Dallas and Houston in that battle for Texas, a live match. Tickets still available according to the Overwatch League website, 6 p.m. on Friday. So if you want to see live Overwatch League, that's the time to turn into YouTube Gaming. And that's the last match of Friday night as well. Moving on to Saturday, May 7th at 3 p.m. Toronto Defiant taking on Washington Justice. Atlanta taking on New York in the second half, or in the second match of Saturday, excuse me. And then the third match being Boston versus those LA Gladiators. And then finally, celebrate Mother's Day with four big Overwatch League matches starting at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. London taking on Vancouver. And then 4:30, you have Paris taking on Florida. 6 p.m., you have Washington taking on Dallas. And then at 7:30, Toronto and Houston. And like I said, some of the more interesting teams to look for in this Western Conference, San Francisco, we don't know where they're going to be. LA put a lot of eggs into the Valorant basket. We'll see if that pays off for them. And then Washington might be their time to ascend a little bit as well with some of the moves that they made. So there is your first week of action. Week 2 is going to look similar. It's going to be all Western Conference teams. And then in week 3, we will start talking about the Philadelphia Fusion and the Eastern Conference. So Kickoff Clash kicks off this week. There is some action to take in, but I really want to get back to talking about that change in schedule and how things have been changing right up to the gun. There have been some questions about the viability of Overwatch League, starting with the issues at Activision Blizzard with the sale to Microsoft and all of the abuse allegations and Bobby Kotick, that name I hate to say, but somehow I still keep saying it. And then you have things like the lack of sponsors because of all of that and the ever-changing schedule, the Overwatch 2 criticism where it might not be quite as different from the original Overwatch game as they had hoped, and other little things like that. I, frankly, am worried. I am worried that we are coming towards the end of Overwatch League just because there is so much uncertainty around the league, around the content, around everything that's happening with the league. We don't know how much Overwatch we're going to be able to take on from here on out, especially if live matches start happening and they don't start filling arenas or really putting butts in seats. You don't know. You don't know who's going to be able to support this, or if Activision's going to be able to support this moving forward. It would be very disappointing, being one of the leagues that started the whole city-based thing. Only getting 5 seasons out of it would be very disappointing, and not not the best news in the entire world, as one would imagine. Do I think that that is a possibility? Yes, I do, unfortunately. Just because of all of the tumultuous things that are happening around the company itself, not necessarily the game. The game should be fine with more updates and the closed beta and the actual release in 2023 with maybe some new heroes and new content and stuff like that. I don't think the game will be an issue. I am strictly talking about the league itself and whether or not it can continue to be viable in the current time that we live in. At first, I thought that the pandemic would really help esports and specifically the Overwatch League, but the apparent mismanagement of things in this league, coupled with all of the, like I keep saying tumultuous, I have to pick different words, but all of the, crap that went on at Activision Blizzard and blew up and stole headlines, and then the sale to Microsoft, which, according to the 6 and 60 Seconds this week, might have been done hastily to get the higher-ups out of trouble, out of something that sounds straight out of Succession. It might have been happening with Activision Blizzard and Xbox. So I don't know what that means for the league. It could be that the new Xbox overlords come in, they see the Overwatch League, and they're like, this just isn't viable, see ya. Or they create some massive esports series that combines the Call of Duty League, which they'll own, the Overwatch League, which they'll own, the Halo Championship Series, which they already own, Gears, if they ever wanted to bring that back, whatever esports circuits they wanted to, and just have a giant, touring thing where everybody plays every game, and or they have special teams for special games, but each game is highlighted in each weekend. We don't know. We don't know what it could mean, and I think that is disappointing, especially since this is the only esports team based in and representing Philadelphia on a stage like this. I do not doubt that there are teams in other games that are based in Philadelphia or from Philadelphia. Sonics, the Susquehanna Sonics, now just Sonics, are big in the Rainbow Six scene. That's a very good example of a team who represents Philly well. But none of the other teams have I been able to watch on ABC on Mother's Day Sunday at a brunch or at an early dinner. Overwatch League, I've been able to do that, or I was able to do that before the pandemic hit. And I really thought that I would be able to do that even more so once it came back and got stronger. But this drip, feed, slow burn, not having all the teams playing in their home cities is killing this league. And I hope that they can figure it out in time, that they can avoid the chopping block and get themselves back into the green and continue this league for as long as it deserves to be out. Overwatch 2 should be the dawning of a new era in the Overwatch League, starting now in its closed beta phase with the matches happening today, and I am afraid that it's going to be its swan song, and that would be very, very disappointing. I hope it turns itself around. I hope they figure it out, but you would forgive me for being worried about the state of the Overwatch League. Coming up on the other side, we are going to talk about the Philadelphia Fusion, even though their matches are 2 weeks away, and the other teams in the Eastern Conference, just to see who we should be worried about and who I think will be no problem whatsoever, even though, again, it's really hard to predict these things in this current season just because you don't know how things are going to play out. Stick around. All right, welcome back to Cheesesteaks and Controllers, episode number 95, the Overwatch League 2022 preview show, presented by Fox PHL, the Gambler. And now it is time to talk about your team, your town, your Philadelphia Fusion. Now, the way we're going to do this is we're going to go back to the end of last year, September 22nd, 2021, the disheartening 3-2 loss to the San Francisco Shock in the Overwatch League 2021 playoffs that sent us home, sent us packing to live and fight another day. So back then, that match was very, very disappointing for me. I remember thinking that we had a legitimate shot to beat the San Francisco Shock, and it blew up in our face. and we were unable to do so. So moving ahead a little bit to October 25th, 2021, Carpe announces that he will be back on the team, which is very, very cool. Best player on the team by far. He's a legend. Played all 5 seasons with the Fusion. I believe he's one of the only players, if not the only player, to play every single game, every single year of the Overwatch League with the same team, which I love. So that's really, really cool. And then we brought in a few players from the Contenders League. Now, if you're not familiar with the Overwatch Contenders League, that is basically like the minors. It's where players go to build themselves up and get into, where they want to be to get into the actual league, and then they pass or go to their certain teams from there. So from January of 2021 until October of 2021, so all of 2021, he played for T1, which, if you're not familiar with T1, they're big in League of Legends, but they are owned by the same company that owns the Fusion. So when they came up from the Contenders League, it's basically the Fusion's farm team, to use a baseball analogy. So both MN3, who is a hit scan DPS player a la Carpe, and Zest were players on T1 who were then basically activated or graduated to the Fusion and came over to the Fusion from there. So that's 2 of our big players from there that will be on the team this year. 2 of our newer names on October 27th and October 28th. And then it must be addressed that November the 7th, 2021, was what could be a very galvanizing event for the team this year, and it really could influence them in one of 2 ways, and it'll make sense when I say it. So Alarm, who was Rookie of the Year in 2020, someone that many people thought might be the best player in the league going into 2022, had announced he was coming back to the Fusion on October 26th. And then out of nowhere, on November 7th, 2021, the team was announcing his death. Alarm had passed away at the age of 20. I don't think he had made 21 quite yet. We're still not entirely sure the details of those. I don't think it's going to be ever come out. Had something to do with an accident, I think, if I remember what his mother had said about it. It was an accident while driving that claimed him. Regardless, a devastating loss to the team, one that they treated with the necessary weight. I really do give the team a ton of credit. Writing a fantastic message from his family and from the team on Twitter 3 days apart, one on the 7th when we found out, and one on the 10th, along with a video tribute, outpouring of support from the entire league. And then they went radio silent on Twitter for like 2 weeks before they came back. So this particular moment in Fusion history kind of adds another layer of unpredictability to what is already an unpredictable year, if you ask me, because that kind of news can do 2 things to a team. It can galvanize them to want to win for their fallen friend, in tribute of Alarm, or it could be devastating to the mental part of the game, causing distractions and stress and depression and things like that. And I don't know how resilient the team is in that regard. Now, some of them, obviously, coming from Contenders, may not have been on the team with them before. Carpe, I believe, is the only returning player then from last year. So he is the only one who had any firsthand experience at this level with Alarm. But I imagine that they were all, friends in the same organization, T1 / Comcast, Spectacor, SK Telecom, whatever you want to call it. They were all familiar with one another, and they may band together for their friend. I know I have firsthand experience in that. You've heard me talk about the show I was in for the last 2 weekends. We had lost a dear part of that in March of 2020, and this was our first show back after losing that person, and it made us better, I think. But being on a stage and acting in front of people is much different than going out and competing at a pro level in any sport, esports or not. I'm not trying to say that our particular situations are exactly the same, because they're not. But I understand the feeling of wanting to do better in tribute of the person who cannot be there with you to enjoy it. And I hold out some hope that that's what's going to happen. It does work in their favor. Not to be like this was the perfect time. Not if it was going to happen. I don't want to be like that. But what I'm saying is the fact that it happened in November and they have had time to process, they have had time to grieve, they've had time to go through all of that. Gives me a little more confidence in the galvanized part as opposed to the negatively affect part. But if it does, it would make perfect sense. It has only been 6 months, and it's been the first time that they've come back to the Fusion in a match since it happened. So we don't know what's going to happen if they pay tribute before the match, like if the Overwatch League pays tribute, which they may do. Just because it's the start of the season, just to remind people of what happened 6 months ago. They may do that, and that might, stir some old feelings. Who knows? Again, just another stack of uncertainty to add to an already uncertain season. But it could have an impact, or it could be, at this point, just something they use to inspire themselves. We'll see. But it needed to be mentioned. It needed to be said that it happened. And I think we'll just have to wait and see what happens from there. So moving on to better news now. On January 5th of 2022, starting the year early, announcing that Fury, a previous tank player who was on the team, who was on the Philadelphia Fusion in the 2020 season, is returning to the team to be a tank, which is really cool. And then also the same day, they signed one of the best players from the, I believe it was the Washington Justice, I want to say. Yes, the Washington Justice in 2020 left the league to play for Team CC in the Contenders League in 2021 and is now back in the league with us. That is Aim God, who is one of a fantastic support player and a player that I think will be a huge asset to this team. One of the more underrated assets to this team, to be completely honest, getting into it. I believe he would be a starting support. They only have 2 support players right now. I think a couple players can go either way. So yes, he will be in every match. He'll be there every time. And next to him will be another player, I believe, from the Contenders League, Fixa, who was part of the Uprising Academy in the Boston Uprising organization, came over to the Fusion, is now starting for us. Also did some time with T1, but then left in 2020 to go to Boston Uprising Academy, and then came back to us in 2022. So I'm excited to see him play as well from the support side of things. And then our other tank, we have Fury, and remember, we only get 1 tank this year. Our second tank was actually signed not too long ago, April 25th, a couple of weeks ago. Yet another T1 signing who played for the farm team in 2021. His name is, I think it's Bellisrea, is how you say it, or Bellisrea. Not exactly sure how to pronounce that, unfortunately. But he is a, 26, I believe? No. He is a 18-year-old player, plays tanks, and I think he's going to be sitting behind Fury on the depth chart starting. So if I am selecting the starting lineup based on those 5, obviously Aim God and Fixa in the support, they're no-brainers because they're the only support players we have. Fury would then get the start at tank just because he's been a starter in the league before. And then DPS, I would obviously go with Carpe. He's the captain of the team. He's the veteran. But I think I would go MN3, and I would have Zest as the alternate just for now, because you can't have both. And I think MN3 is the stronger player coming into the season. So Carpe, MN3, Fury, Aim God, and Fixa is a starting lineup that I can get behind, to be completely honest with you. It's one that I am quite excited about for this team. But again, just with how much is unknown, uh, it's a brand new season. And for a team like the Fusion, who has made a habit of getting close but not getting the job done, this could be the year they finally get over that hump. Wipe the slate clean, and in wiping the slate clean, it includes all reputations or the word that I'm actually looking for eludes me, or expectations maybe is what I'm looking for. But, first season of the league, they lost in the grand finals. They were the runner-ups for the entire season. Multiple times in the last 2 years, they have gotten into the qualifying round, the elimination rounds, or the brackets themselves for the in-game tournaments, only to fall short. July of 2020, the Summer Showdown particularly sticks in my craw. The best of 7 series, they lost to, I believe, the Paris Eternal. From that, I remember that so vividly. It's still one of the best overall matches of Overwatch I have ever seen. And we just came up short, unfortunately, in that match. So they could use the fact that it's a new level playing field to their advantage. Now, is it a pure level playing field? No. There is a lot of the original game's DNA in Overwatch 2, to the point where some detractors say that it's barely different. I have not had a chance to try it, so I don't know for myself. But there is enough different, I would say, about this new league and about this new game that you don't have to think about all of those past failures anymore. This is a new season in a new format with new players, save for one, and a couple of returning players. This is the year, I think. Now, the Fusion have to come out of the gate super, super hard on May 20th in that first matchup, playing the defending champion Shanghai Dragons, because of course they are, but again, doesn't really mean all that much this year because they have had a lot of tumult as well. They do still have Fleta, and I believe they still have Void, so they have their best players, but I do think that everything is open now. Everything's on the table for the team and for the league, and I think that if they come out strong and win their first matches in the kickoff clash and go out and make a statement that they're here and they're serious, they're here to win, I think that could bode well for the rest of the year. Do I think it's possible? Yes, of course I do. Because they have a chip on their shoulder about always getting close but never winning the big one. They have the chip on their shoulder because of the loss of their friend. And they have the chip on their shoulder because they want to be the best. And since the first season, they have been associated with grand finals and good success. Now they just have to capitalize. So I am looking forward to the Fusion starting. It's going to happen 2 weeks later than I thought, which really stinks. But that first matchup against Shanghai is slated for May the 20th, I believe. Let me just make sure while I'm sitting here. No, sorry, it is the 19th. May the 19th is the current schedule for your Overwatch League in this first year. And then we will move. It's May the 20th at 6 a.m. So it's May 20th at 6 a.m. Eastern Time. And then Sunday, May 22nd at 6 a.m. also. And then on Memorial Day weekend, they play Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. All 4 days of Memorial Day weekend, there will be Fusion action waiting for you, which is very exciting. And I'm looking forward to it. So we'll see what they can do this year. I will have my finger on that pulse. I will be watching Friday at 6 a.m., May the 20th. Looking forward to a great matchup. And keep it here for more Fusion and Overwatch League news throughout the entire year. Cheesesteaks and Controllers, Fox PHL Gambler will be your source for Overwatch League news. Go Fusion. Looking forward to a fantastic season. And with that, we're at the end of episode 95 of Cheesesteaks and Controllers, presented by Fox PHL The Gambler, 102.5 FM, 1480 AM, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts is where you can hear from me. As usual, if you were hearing the sound of my voice right now, that means you're at the end of the show, and I very much appreciate you making it here. It means a lot to me that you have spent your time with me this week, listening to me talk about Overwatch League and ramble on about esports and things like that, especially if you don't understand it and you're trying to learn more. I would love to be the one to teach it to you. I look forward to that opportunity every single week to talk about things in esports and video games. Make sure you do check out Overwatch League on YouTube. Matches start 3 p.m. Thursday, so this episode will go up 9 a.m. Thursday, so you'll have a good 6 hours to get acquainted with the Overwatch League 2022 season before it actually begins, thanks to Cheesesteaks and Controllers. So with that, I hope you have a fantastic weekend. I hope you have a fantastic week right behind it, and we will be back next week with episode 96 and more of the biggest esports and gaming news there is. Goodbye.